Welcome back to the Exchange Artist Workshop series. We're here today with the artist formerly known as Fallen. Ryland, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. Doing great. Happy to be here, Goku.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have you here and just kind of to watch this journey unfold. For those of you who aren't familiar, this Artist Workshop series dives a little bit deeper into some of the rising talent that exists onto Solana, a little bit deeper than you get in a Twitter space or a thread. It's just great to be face to face, getting to learn a little bit more about, where the artist comes from, how long they've been doing it, and how their mind thinks, because I think that's a beautiful part of being an artist after all. All right, we'll start off with this one, man. Like, really basic stuff here. Like, how long have you been an artist? Where did that first spark for you? You could start all the way back with childhood or whatever, and then where did that transition go to being like, okay, now I am an artist? You go from doing doodles and all of a sudden one day you're like, you know what, this is me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The artist label is a little weird. I didn't actually put that label on myself until last year, I guess, when I first started with the visual art here. But really my whole life I've been very creative. When I was in first grade, I won this art competition in my school, and normally it was all the eighth graders and stuff that won it. So really peaked early there. got my art printed on the back of a T-shirt that they did for the whole school. So that was pretty cool back then. But as time went on, I sort of gravitated towards music production, and that was really my main sort of creative outlet. I've always just been a massive fan of music. Was raised by two Deadheads, so grew up listening to a lot of Grateful Dead and stuff like that. A very creative household. And I was also raised in Nashville, Tennessee. So pretty much everyone and their mother, learns to play the guitar. I was, had a band, a rock band growing up. So as time went on, I started putting out pretty bad music on SoundCloud in 7th to 8th grade. I would put out these shitty dubstep remixes.
As we do.
yeah, it was the time.
Yep.
But yeah, so I was using different music software like Ableton Live, Native Instruments Machine, like a drum pad. And that sort of translates really well into what I'm doing now. With the digital art, because I was so used to, adjusting knobs and fine tuning all these sounds, right, and designing synthesizers and stuff. So while I wasn't doing visual art back then, that definitely, looking back on it, really comes into play doing the digital art that I'm doing now on things like Procreate, Glitch software, where there is just a lot of fine tuning those levels, except now it's just stuff like textures and colors rather than the sounds that I was doing back then.
Yeah, there is a lot of similarities between the two, from down to the softwares, just knowing how to operate, go through these, Ableton, right? It's one of the most confusing, learning curve wise, it's one of the most confusing softwares. But then once you get it, it kind of becomes second nature. It's kind of cool to hear how that prepares you to pick up these visual digital art tools and kind of graft them over. Is there do you do any of your glitch work using audio software? Because I know that there is some glitch artists who they basically put their visual outputs into code and then put it into I don't know if Ableton, but I know people use Audacity and whatnot to data mosh. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, I've played around with Audacity before, just sort of purposely, misusing these tools.
Yeah.
Which that again is something that I used to always do, misusing certain sounds in unexpected ways, music producing. But I haven't released any art that I did on Audacity. Most of my glitch work is actually done with this pretty dang rudimentary, it's actually an iPhone app called Glitch, and Airtime turned me on to that. So he's one of the absolute OGs when it comes to glitch art. So he was nice enough to, let me in on that little secret. But yeah, that's normally what I do most of my glitch work on. Between that and I'll bounce back between glitch and then Procreate.
That's awesome. It's just so cool to like the to me like when I look into glitch art, it's like that those similarities that exist, like especially with dubstep, right? Or like that kind of electronic music. It's like most of that came from destroying sounds, and so now you just take those outputs and now they're visual. So it's kind of cool that your thought process is somewhat the same, but now just in a different format.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've always been a big fan of distortion. So I love just like crunching things down that way. And yeah, now like with my current circuit series, if you really zoom in on it, it's like really got this sort of crunchy look deep down, which yeah, I've just always been a fan of those sort of like subtle details.
Yeah, that's really cool. Where did you first like find this crazy world of NFTs, and like where was that realization that it's like, okay, I should be here. I should spend my time and energy to whatever this crazy thing is.
Yeah, so my stories, like most people, got into it originally on the profile picture side back in the 2021 bull market. Like many, I sort of got sucked in by the big numbers and everything. Saw all the news about Bored Apes, the typical intro into NFTs that I think most people do have. Yeah, so that was back in like August, September of 2021.
And was that on Solana? Like, did you start over on that side?
Yeah, so at first I looked into Ethereum, and I actually originally was looking into it just to actually mint my own art. It was like very basic pixel stuff. And I just could not figure that out for the life of me. It seemed like way too overwhelming. So yeah, eventually I was sort of looking for the next thing. I stumbled upon Solana at that point. This was right after sort of Degenerate Apes, Solana Monkey Business, and Thugbirds were really the only ones out at that point. Oh yeah.
What a time.
So I saw those. They were at like, I don't know, 30 Sol or something, which is a lot lower than most of them are now, except for Thugbirds.
All right.
But RIP. But yeah, so I thought I sort of missed the boat on those, and I ended up minting Piggy Soul Gang, if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
And they eventually rolled out the Alpha Art Marketplace, which was a competitor to Magic Eden. So I ended up calculating the numbers of the revenue share and went all in on Piggy Soul Gang, which in hindsight was obviously an awful idea. But sort of long story short, they rugged the hell out of us. And I was sort of in so deep that I ended up actually getting elected to sort of run the DAO. So I was one of the people who sort of helped negotiate bringing Alpha Art from those old devs into the control of the DAO, which was pretty exciting because it was really the first DAO run marketplace, which at the time I thought was cool. Over the process of the next few months running this project in this marketplace with 4 other guys who we were all just community members at first.
Right.
So, I mean, we were passionate about it, but we had no clue what we were doing running a marketplace. The project we could run okay, and we delivered some pretty cool like on-chain governance tools. But yeah, eventually Magic Eden pretty much crushed us. And at that point, I became a little disillusioned with the profile picture side of things because I realized it was mostly based on hype cycles and stuff like that, versus actually delivering tools and building. I think famous FoxFed, for example, would be much higher, much more valued right now if we actually valued, real builders. Right. So eventually that led me into the one-of-one art scene around late November 2021, and absolutely fell in love with the place. And ever since then, it's sort of history,
Oh, it's really awesome. Where did that you kind of go through this path and then you find the one-of-one scene. where was it that you were, as an artist, were like, oh man, like, this is me. And then like, it's really cool to like look back for me personally.
Mhm.
And I think this is one of the best part about the blockchain is like, you get to go back and see this artist's progression. So it's cool to see like, where you started and then to where you are now. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite parts as well, is being able to see that progression in real time on chain. So back when I entered the one of one space, it was kind of weird. Like almost all the art was this very dark, sort of lots of cloaked, hooded figures. Utopia was one of the first artists that really inspired me. I loved his sort of surreal art with a dark edge to it.
Yeah.
And The Observer was another person who was really big. They aren't that active anymore, but they were a big inspiration early on. So yeah, I just sort of worked with the things that were inspiring me at the time. And that led me to my initial series called Fallen. And that was actually, I came into it very like branding oriented. So literally named myself Fallen. Everything was about that. And while that was, it was really, I'm trying to think about how to put this. It was me, but over the course of that series, I realized that, it wasn't quite me enough, if that makes sense. I was taking
Right.
lots of inspiration from these other sources, and I really just wanted to find like something that truly felt like my own lane. That, by the time I was done with that series, the sort of dark cloaked hooded figures really became like a meme almost, because it just got so overdone. Everybody was doing it. And that's what eventually led me into leaning into the abstract space and specifically into the glitch space.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think like it's something that is really unique about this movement, right? It's like you get to watch artists progress their, who they are. They get to find a voice, and taking all this inspiration from all around, and then like creating, you get to start at the version 1 of yourself, right? It's like, okay, this is like, because it's all work that you're super proud of, right? It's like, it's all beautiful work. But then like, as you kind of mature and evolve with the space and like, I don't know, it's really awesome to get to watch like people grow into themselves as artists, right?
Definitely.
I think it's like the real utility behind the one of one space. It's especially with Solana, right? Like so many of us, it was so small, the one of one scene. We get to see like all of these people like really grow into, like yourself. Now you consider yourself an artist, whereas maybe when you first started that journey, you might not have viewed yourself as much in that light.
Yeah. I mean, when I first dropped my first pieces, I would have been happy with a sale, period. I didn't even know whether they would sell or not. So to see how far I've come in the past year has been pretty wild.
How do you manage that, right? Like, how do you manage that expectation of like going from, and I don't mean necessarily just you, but I'd love to know like how you do it. But I feel like a lot of artists, they start with that mentality, right? Like, oh, like I'm just gonna make work that I'm proud of, put it out there. We'll see what the market does. And then as you start to get sales, this pressure kind of hits. It's like, now I have to sell for X amount to be like climbing this ladder that I created. That it's not actually there, but it's there in my head. How do you manage that as an artist?
That's honestly one of the biggest struggles, I think, for myself and many other artists. Like, you keep having these goals and these milestones, and you hit them. It's like climbing a mountain. You reach this peak, and then you look up, and there's a whole new peak you got to hit. Like, yeah, so you reach these goals, and you think that's sort of going to be the thing that makes you happy. Like, that's where everything clicks, and it definitely doesn't work that way.
Right.
So that's why I'm big on sort of enjoying the process. That is crucial, because reaching those goals is never going to be the thing that like truly makes you happy. It's cool for a couple days or a week, and then it's sort of on to the next thing. So I think you really just gotta, I try to focus on just enjoying like every day. And that's sort of exactly why I do the art, because it's finally something, it's a profession now, I guess,
Yep.
that, you know, I'd wake up on a Saturday morning and be pumped to, you know, go to work, so to speak, to just sit
It's
down all
like
day and
that's
create.
like yesterday. Like you were like, oh, like I'm so happy that you had to push this one day because I stayed up all night making art on accident. You know, like
Yeah.
that's the way it should be, right? Like if you're stressed out to create, if you're stressed out about the process of being an artist, like something's not right, and you have to
Mhm.
like readjust that. You know, it's like I feel like crypto by nature has this grind culture. You know, it kind of has that Elon Musk, like,
Mhm.
if I don't sleep ever, I'm going to be the best. You know, like if I work 5,000 times harder than this person, I'll get 5,000 times further. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. Right. And I think
Mhm.
it's great to have, you're always pretty vocal about that too. And I think it's really necessary because it is one of the things I noticed that so many artists get caught up in this wishy-washy feeling of like, I just did something, but it's not enough, you know, like,
Yeah, yeah. And that's some one of my big artists I look up to is Sleeper.
mm,
And you know, I come from a law background, so I'm sort of trained to be in that grind mindset.
right.
And something he told me a while ago is that as an artist, you've really got to make time to just do nothing, because that's when you sort of can decompress and
Yep.
just, you know, take in the world, which is really important for creating good art that is meaningful and has something to say. So yeah, that's been sort of something that I continue to work at, is just really making time to slow down and do nothing, which is a lot
Yeah.
harder than it sounds sometimes in this space, like you said.
It really is, man. I sound so silly giving advice sometimes because it's you're saying the most rudimentary things like drink water and go outside and enjoy a vacation, but all of those things like they add up, right? It adds
Mm-hmm.
up into like where you're creating from. You know, it's like some of the best work I've seen creators make is when they go away for a couple weeks, couple months. You know, like go on vacation, go be inspired by like the world around you. And then they come back and they're like, oh yeah, like I remember why I started doing this, you know? And I think it's really important that like, the top creators, they keep pushing that ethos out, right? It's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jotaro is a great example of that recently. He, you know,
Yes.
wasn't active for a really long period of time, and he has recently come back and just released this like stunning artwork that you can tell is a huge level up, and just, I mean, taking that time off to decompress and I guess work for months and months and months, it does show.
It really does. And it also goes to show that there's not one right way, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like you can spend all this time on a piece, you can do a bunch of pieces and release them. Like there's no blueprint, throw away the map, get
Yeah,
lost for a bit.
Degen Poet's sort of on the opposite end of that spectrum. Like
Yeah,
he can
exactly.
crank out work and that works out amazing for him. So
And
yeah.
even that, like you see, like he had his like pullbacks from that as well, right? He had
Mhm.
his time where he was like, guys, I'm going away. Like I have to for my health, and
Yeah.
it's important, right? And I think that those kind of statements are really powerful. It also kind of goes into like my next question, which is like, where do you see that importance of community here in Web3? And how do you balance that, right? Like, there's
Mhm.
so many group chats, there's so many places to be, and like, I feel like as artists, we feel like we have to be in all of them so people know our name and like want to buy our art. And it's like, how do we balance that?
Yeah. So I kind of look at the community side in like two different ways. One
Mm,
is on the artist side. I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of the world where artists have been so connected. So that leads to, I think, a bit of a healthy competition where you
right.
see your buddies start to level up. You're like, okay, I gotta like level up too a little bit. And also, as far as like sharing techniques and tools, you can sort of bounce that stuff off of other artists. And I think it really speeds up the rate at which like artists can progress. and level up their craft. So that's a huge pro for me, in my opinion. And then on the collector side also, I think it's crucial to build those relationships with collectors. I'm a big proponent of, quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need, every single collector. Not everyone's going to connect with your art.
Agreed.
Especially when I've gone down this rabbit hole into like a very niche sort of glitch art aesthetic. I know that's not going to be for everybody, but I have been very careful about curating a really strong base of collectors that I'm able to go to for advice and coaching and support. And just like friendships also. That's huge because that's what makes the space fun and enjoyable. On the flip side of that, the community aspect of feeling like you need to stay active on Twitter, that's really the only downside that I see. And that can sort of get in the way of the creative process a bit, because I know plenty of artists spend more time on Twitter than they do creating, which obviously is not the way you want it in an ideal situation.
Yeah, I think that it's like this trap that we get into, right? And it's so funny. I think as artists and as humans, we love to find rules. We love to think of a reason why X artist is done better than Y artist. And it's like, oh, it must be because they tweeted 500 times more a day, right? It's like, no, and one thing I always try to say to people, it's like, there's artists out there with 500 followers on Twitter that do better than that with 50,000, right? And this is real. Like it's not about the number. It's about how you actually utilize that group that has cared about you and decided to believe in you. And I really like what you said, like using that collector base. Like they're not there to like, you're not there to like please everyone, right? It's like, figure out exactly who those people are and like go fishing with a line for that one target fish that you want to get instead of throwing the net out and getting all the other, junk that comes with it. It's hard to fight the noise though.
Yeah. I like what you said about the rules also, which like, I always thought like, oh, I must not be doing my marketing right, or there must be some sales trick I'm missing.
Yeah.
Then towards the end of my last series, Fallen is Peaking, I created a couple pieces that I thought were just clearly better art, and had the very obvious realization that if you just make truly better art, it'll be valued higher. Like it sounds so obvious, but I think, like you say, a lot of people are looking for these, marketing tricks or sales tricks, when in reality, just focusing on the craft, I think, is where your time is best spent.
Focusing on the craft and then also knowing how to back yourself with that. Like when you make really good work, like you probably came into that conversation being like, I know this is great work. You came in confident, not cocky, right? It's not like this is better than everyone else. You're not putting others down to climb, but you're coming in with a certain confidence. It's like, I'm really proud of this work. Like this is some of my best, and sure, you can say that over and over again, but like, collectors can feel when you mean it. It's like when you're not genuine about it and every piece is, oh my God, this is my best work ever. Maybe that's true, but for most it's not, right? And it's okay. Like you don't have to one up yourself every single time. It's not the way art works.
Yeah, right.
But it's fun. It's fun to try to do.
That's the goal. Exactly.
It's fun to try to do.
And every now and again you have that one breakthrough piece.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Where was that like spark to start creating this abstract art? You talked about it a little bit, like with how you transform, but like, where was that catalyst moment that you were like, oh man, like I want to make that stuff?
Yeah. So with the Fallen stuff, towards the end of the series, I was looking at it and I realized like, I love it, but I don't know if it's stuff I'd want to hang on my wall. I couldn't picture it hanging in like a nice apartment or a big house or something. And so I live in New Orleans, right in sort of the gallery district downtown. So I spend a lot of time walking around, looking in these galleries. And I realized looking at the abstract art, that's really what I connected with the most.
Mhm.
That is this sort of stuff I'd want hanging on my wall. So at that point, it sort of clicked. It's like, well, duh, like make the art that you would want hanging on your own wall. Um, so that's sort of what led me into the abstract space. It was also collecting art. I noticed very quickly that through collecting, I'd always gravitate towards the abstract stuff. So that's what was inspiring me for one, and two, just sort of like the stuff I'd want to hang on my wall.
I think that's like a really quite a good concept. Like I always say, if it annoys you, it probably annoys someone else. This is like the art version of that, right? It's like, if you like it, someone else out there probably would like it too, And it's like
Yeah,
if you think it's gonna look really great on your wall, like someone else probably will too. I kind of like that mentality.
yeah. Just try to like create the art like you want to see in the world.
Was there like a certain artist or like obviously like this abstract work has been quite popular, but the way that you go about abstraction is very glitch. It's very
Mhm.
digital. Was there anyone that inspired you to go this route, or was this more of like time and place, right? Like you're already using digital mediums, so of course that's going to be where you exist.
Yeah, so I really came into it wanting to do something explicitly digital.
Mhm.
I feel like since we're in the digital medium, I want to do something that is sort of in your face digital that you couldn't achieve with a traditional medium. Um, so that was part of it, just wanting to really lean into the digital side of things. And since then, I've sort of grown to appreciate the whole digital abstract art scene as the movement that I think it is, and I think it's sort of just budding right now, but I think it will
Yeah.
become a true movement, just like past movements, where most art movements like that are based off of these new tools that come to
Yes.
be. Like in the Renaissance, we all of a sudden learned how to work with perspective, and that really changed the game. So I feel like this is sort of the next step in that context. Um, but inspiration wise, I think airtime was really big for me. Uh, Paranoid Hill, Lisanne is
Of
a
course.
huge inspiration. Uh, let's see. Yeah, and I also wanted to do like abstract landscapes coming from my Fallen stuff. I really enjoyed doing the landscapes there. And I sort of liked the concept of having it be very abstracted, but still having bits and pieces of, I guess, a semblance of reality that you're able to sort
Right.
of latch
Right.
onto in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like looking at this progression, right? Like I'm looking at your series and we start and it starts off with these like you said, with the Fallen collection that's like very much, they feel like paintings, they feel like landscapes. And then you
Mhm.
go into this Fallen is Peaking, which takes those landscapes and like starts to destroy them a bit, and like
Mhm.
starts to like make them into these like really like fanciful worlds. And then now we go towards like your most recent circuits collection, right? I'm skipping over a couple, of course, but like I like how you've almost like shedded the name Fallen, right? And now you're going by your actual name. And
Mhm.
the work has now evolved into complete digital abstraction. And I almost like watching that, like, like you it's almost like you found yourself through these collections, which is really cool to watch that progression.
Yeah, that's definitely what's been going on. So I just picked up like I had picked up an iPad about a month before releasing that first Fallen piece. So, my skills were not really there, but I was doing my best. And so that sort of tracks, one like me just doing this daily, pretty much all day, trying to get as good as fast as possible.
Hmm.
And dang, I'm sorry. What was there a question in there?
I don't know.
I don't. Sorry, I
It
sort
might
of
have been
blanked out
more of
there
a
for a second.
statement.
Yeah.
That's all right. Uh, it kind of leads perfectly into like what this next little bit was, and uh, that's, like how do you find the inspiration behind these like heavier glitch pieces, right? Like what are the concepts that are in your mind as you progress from like, those earlier series, which were more landscape based and more based in reality, to now things that are based in more of, this world of abstraction? Like where do you find those points of inspiration, and like, do you ground those to points of reality or culture or, meme, whatever, like.
This, the Circuit series is really my first series where there is less outside inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Part of you mentioned before, like that I'm going by my own name now with these new pieces, was after that trip to Art Basel in Miami at the exchange event. It was really cool to get to see all the pieces on display there and to get to see my work there. And across the street from there was the main Art Basel event.
Yeah.
And I was actually shocked to see that there was digital art there. But it was sort of printed on these like big pieces of, printed on different stuff. It wasn't like on the digital screens.
Yeah.
And after sort of living in this like Web3 space, seeing all the great digital art that is out there, I realized like the stuff that's the digital art that's represented by these like top galleries, it's not the coolest digital art out there. It's not the stuff that's cutting edge.
Right.
The people like truly shaping this digital abstract movement, they're on Web3. It's like Jack Kaido, ADHD, Lee San.
Yeah.
So that's when I sort of had this like aha moment where like what we're doing here really can be, I think, important. And yeah, I just think it's still yet to sort of come to fruition, but I do think its time is coming. And yeah, I just sort of want to put the smallest little thumbprint on there just to be able to be a part of that and help like push the space forward if I can.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. And I remember we had this conversation too about this a little bit when we were in Miami. And that was like some of the colors, right? Some of the colors, they can't exist the same way printed on that piece of paper as they can on a screen. So you enter this really cool world where people like yourself are creating things to be viewed digitally. And it opens up this new world, which is digital art, right? And inside of that, we have so many different things, whether that be abstraction, glitch, generative, whatever. It goes on and on and on. Illustration, all of these things that can exist in a more digital realm and be kind of portrayed as such. I remember we were just looking at the RGB of your piece when we were in Miami, and it was just like so vivid, right? Like those colors. And these movements, they start off niche, right? They always start off and it seems small. Right now, you probably can name most of the big players, right? You probably, as a glitch artist, you probably know most of the Web3 glitch artists that are around. And it's cool to see that kind of like ripple happen, right? It's like a few years ago, there wasn't any form of digital art at Art Basel. So now, like, to even have the smallest little bit, to see where we'll be in that, and as this ripple keeps moving outwards, is really exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's like where digital art is really headed. Like someone like Rafik Anadol, for example, just does crazy stuff. I mean, it's like magic seeing some of his projections and the way it sort of like plays with perspective and just like really bends reality in ways that, don't get me wrong, I love physical paintings, but you just can't achieve that same sort of like mind-blowing, magical, perspective bending stuff like you can with digital art in some context.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're going to be entering this like really fascinating realm, just especially as technology keeps increasing. And like, I think that largely like the needs of consumers and the needs of the art market, whatever, they drive where technology goes. So we get to see these like projector technologies and screen display technologies and all of this gain traction and then therefore get more affordable and then into more artist hands. It's a fun snowball that I'm excited to watch unfold. You know, now,
Definitely.
I mean, iPads are the perfect example, right? It's like how much has changed in the world of art from an iPad and Procreate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's accessible for anybody pretty much, which is really cool.
What are 3 tips that you, as a glitch artist, would give to another fellow glitch artist? Because I feel like so many people get a little confused on like how to take that, right? Like it's like, do I have to just sit here and data mosh code and Audacity? You know, what are these? What are 3 like really solid tips that you would give for improving your craft as a glitch artist?
So the first thing I think is just don't be afraid to suck, because you
Yes.
will suck. You will be awful at first, and it won't look good. Um, but you've just got to like have the patience to sort of push through that initial period, and sort of find your own way. That's might be my second piece of advice, is that there is no right way to do glitch, which I really like about it. It's a medium where there are no rules. It's basically built on that concept that there are no rules, and that you're supposed to, misuse this software. So I really love that there's no right way to do it. So I'd say, yeah, don't be afraid to suck, have patience, and just like stay actively learning.
Mm.
I spend a lot of time going down these YouTube rabbit holes of different tutorials and stuff like that. There's so much information out there on the internet. And I think that's a great way to, stack up your skills, figure out what you can work into your own process, ditch whatever doesn't work. And yeah, just like continue trying to grow and just don't get complacent, I guess.
Yeah, I think those are really, really solid tips, man. Like all of these things, like when you start to give advice, it like starts to feel really broad, but like those are some really important things to like hone in on and remember. It's like I think so many people are afraid of making something that's not beautiful, making something that makes you a little uncomfortable. It's like that's all part of it, right? It's like even if you have to throw away 100 of something and you get one thing that makes you really proud, you did it. You accomplished it as an artist,
Definitely. Yeah, like you hear a lot about the 10,000 hours rule. Do 10,000 hours, you'll be an expert. But I try to kind of think of it as like a 10,000 piece rule. If you do 10,000 pieces, chances are like some of those are going to be some pretty cool pieces.
Right.
So yeah, just like keep creating.
Have you learned anything new? Like, and I guess this is, I think that this your perspective on this will be really interesting because you started to really like come into yourself as an artist in this space. Have you learned anything new from releasing art on exchange art? Right. I think it's a really interesting question because I talk to artists that are both, coming from the traditional realm and then artists also who have started on in Web3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started on Web3, first released on Holoplex, and then as soon as Exchange popped up, I hopped right over to y'all. As far as like releasing art specifically on Exchange, I don't want to talk crap about other marketplaces, but I do think there's something to be said for going to where the volume is. I do see some artists that release work on other marketplaces sometimes go under the radar a bit, which sucks to see. But yeah, I like to just have all my stuff in one space. I think that makes it a little easier to find, just to have it all centralized right there. Again, like everything else, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. There's definitely
Right.
something to be said for having work on various platforms just to increase your visibility, because someone might be scrolling on another platform and find your work there. So yeah, I guess what I've learned is just that there's no right or wrong way, but definitely be deliberate in what you're doing. Don't just put stuff out on another marketplace just for the hell of it.
No, dude, I'm gonna drop on Bitcoin and it's gonna make me rich. It's
Yeah,
gonna make
I
me
saw
so rich.
so many people just like went straight to inscribe stuff on their ordinals, and it's like, okay. I mean,
Yep.
I just think maybe it's something, but
It's an
chances
NFT, but
are,
plated in gold.
yeah, there we go. I mean,
No, you have to laugh about all these things, man. It's if you can't laugh about the space, then you're probably going to have a hard time navigating through it. Uh,
oh yeah,
it's something you do pretty well, as well as many others in the space, which is kind of making commentaries on it through your art, right? Like using meme as a form of art, and it's something
Mhm.
like I think that you do a really good job of it, and I think that the digital abstraction gets to play with this in a really fun way. It's not as like in your face of like this is a meme, but I
Mhm.
think you get to play with culture in a very fun way through digital art.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with my Pepe Pepe stuff. I think like, yeah, it's got to be fun. As an artist, like I take the circuit stuff super seriously. And don't get me wrong, I take the Pepe stuff seriously too, but I think you got to have an area where you can just let loose, have fun. And that's honestly where like a lot of those aha moments happen, because I'm just creating with, am I allowed to curse?
Absolutely.
Okay, just got to have like a no fuck sort of attitude sometimes. And that's where the Pepe stuff comes in. And I'll pick up stuff there that I then translate over to like the
Right.
one of one type stuff. So yeah, got to keep it fun.
I think that's so often forgotten, right? If like you get stuck into creating a certain way and not experimenting, like that's some of the best parts of collaborations, some of the best parts of doing one-off series and working with others. I think it's really powerful. You get to discover things that maybe you didn't realize that you could do, or that you can apply to. Maybe you have a certain series that is in a certain constraint, but maybe if you combine these two constraints, that's your next series. You never know, right? And I think that you got to keep having fun. So I appreciate
Definitely.
that sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you want to go as an artist? Right. This is a broad question, and don't get too hung up on it. But like in the perfect world of your creation, like where do you want to take this? Where do you want to take your journey?
Um, so I think one of my strengths is that I'm just delusional and naive enough to sort of have these big sort of dreams and think that they can happen and to go for them. But I mean, someday I would like to do like large scale, immersive, maybe even like interactive installations, stuff like the Rafik Anadol's of the world that like just create this magic. I'm not saying I'm going to be on like that level or anything, but I'd love to, bring the sort of glitch aesthetic that I have right now that's currently mostly stills. I'd like to, put those in motion at some point, add some animation, get some giant projectors and start, building these actual immersive exhibits that you
Absolutely.
can experience in real life. Because I think that's one of the big uh, things holding the digital art space back right now is just the lack of solid displays to show it on. Because it's not going to be that mind blowing if you're just looking at it on a cell phone or even
Yep.
on a computer screen. I think, I'm a believer that like I just like big art. I like stuff to be big.
It's
And
impressive.
yeah,
Like,
I just want to like, I don't know, blow some minds someday in that way.
well, we're here supporting you, man. Like, I really personally am one of the most excited about that. Watching artists who found themselves in Web3 take themselves and just to being an artist everywhere, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Web3 is meant to be a tool, not a constraint, right? And that's what I always tell people. So, like, why not? If you found yourself as an artist here with these tools, take it and do something in the real world, because I think that's going to be such a large translation, right? Like how many people at the Exchange Gallery in Miami came in and they were like, "Oh, this is digital art. Oh, this is an NFT. Like I understand it now." And that was one of the points and the reasons we had these vignettes set up where it's like, this is what digital art looks like in an office. This is what it looks like in a living room. This is what it looks like in a traditional gallery space. And you get to kind of, visualize how you live with it. And even more so, then you take these digital art pieces and then you make them massive, right? You make them interactive. And then you realize that they're not different at all from their counterpart. They're just on a blockchain. It's the difference.
Yeah. Like, did you see the monolith down at Art Basel in Miami? Like,
yeah.
That's the kind of thing that someday I want to, be a part of. It's just undeniable. Like, you look at that and yeah, no one's going to say, oh, that digital art isn't real art or like stuff like that.
Well, I urge you, and I urge every like Web3 artist, quote unquote Web3 artist, right? Keep applying to those things. If there's something that you think you want to do, whether it be a grant, whether it be an exhibition, a gallery, even if you think I'm not there, don't make that decision for yourself. Fill out the application, do the process, back yourself, and who knows, if they decide that piece looks great there, then so be it. Like the monolith has been around for a couple of years now. And this year I got to see some of my friends on there who just a couple of years ago, we never would have imagined that their art would have been up there. Right. So like nothing's impossible. Like just keep doing it. And I'm personally really excited. Those major goals sound really, really great. It's like, can't wait to see Fallen in a new world. Right.
Yeah, they're big goals, but I mean, I think that's like stuff I want to spend the rest of my life working towards,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that people forget that that's okay, right? It's like, if you want to be an artist, you have a whole life. It's not just like, how fast can I make these sales? And that's, I think, one of the curses of Web3. But as it matures, I think more and more start to realize, it's like, how do I set myself up to be a career artist who's using these tools rather than just an artist who's using these tools for, the intermediate, it's like the right now.
Yeah. I see a lot of people sort of set goals around, I want to hit this sale price. I want to get my like a triple digit sale. But I think that's probably not the best way to think. You just got to set more, content based goals around the art that you want to make.
Agree. And it also helps you stay happier too. Incremental goals, it's one of the reasons in like the business world, they have you put like, what do you plan to do in this business in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 5 years? Like those little things are important to do every so often. I want to take things a little shorter term before we end off here. This has been an amazing conversation, as is always with you, my friends. But what's next for you as a creator? Short term. You have this circuit series, which is amazing. What are your plans around that? And then like after that, what's next? Do you have your feelers on where you want to take it next?
Yeah, so I'll start out with the most near term circuit series. So I've been working really hard on just pumping out a lot of pieces for that. I got to around 100 pieces. And then over the past few weeks, I've been sort of whittling those down to sort of the top 25 pieces. I think I'm going to go with 25 as the number that I want to go with. Just to get like a rated approach. I don't think you have at least all the art that you make. So yeah, I'll be releasing those over the course of this year. I'm planning on doing one a month. And these sort of capsule drop type things. So I'll be doing like one circuit piece every month. And then I'm going to try to drop, some other stuff as well, mix in the Pepe stuff, mix in some more of the Fallen is Peaking style work, just to give myself that sort of freedom and creativity to explore stuff.
Yeah.
And then semi-longer, you actually mentioned this earlier, like I was up all night the day before, and honestly last night also kind of, because I just discovered this new software called Touch Designer. and it's a super powerful program with pretty much like limitless capabilities. So I've started working on that to, take my circuit aesthetic and start to put it in motion and do some animation with it. And
That's awesome.
yeah, just currently learning that like new node-based like programming language, which sounds a lot a lot trickier than it is personally. But yeah, I think that'll be a fun new sort of frontier to explore. And I think that's really where I'll be able to spend a lot of time over, next 5 years, next decade or so,
That's
honing in
awesome.
on that and seeing how far I can take it.
Yeah, you get to create this digital voice of your own, which I think you've done an amazing job of. You get to you see a piece of yours and it's by you. And I think that's only been deepening. So really excited to see where you take that, whether whatever the technology leads to. I know how it feels when you hear infinite possibilities. You're like, oh shit, this is going to be a couple weeks of just sleepless nights, but like really fulfilling ones. Where you're finding that new trick, you're finding that new workflow that makes it a little bit easier, and diving through all the terrible YouTube videos to find the one gym that can help you out.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome, man, and I'm really excited. Congratulations, by the way, on everything with the Circuit series so far. It's been really great to just see someone who puts so much into this space get that recognition. Get their art into the hands of some amazing collectors. So congrats on that front as well.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, it's been pretty surreal. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. And of course, thank you for your time, my friend. This has been an amazing talk today. Hope everyone that listens in gets to pull some bits of knowledge and gems from this. It's like, I think it's really special when you get to hear from artists who have become what they are in this space. It proves to everyone that you can do it. You can reach levels of success that you didn't even think were possible by just trying, by just giving a fuck, and by just persevering, right?
Yeah. Thank you, man. And it's like, yeah, none of that would have been possible like without the community. So just got to like emphasize that.